All right, folks. All right. Good morning, and welcome to the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN in our affiliate stations. And don't forget that we are live streaming on the TuneIn app as we broadcast from the Box Drop Middlesex Mattress Outlet Studios in Westborough, Massachusetts. You can join the conversation at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. We have a text line, which is up and running. You can text us in real time at 617-297-8388. 617-297-8388. If you can't text, but you have a device, you can actually email me at textjoeontheradio@gmail.com. All one word. It appears on the same screen, just like you would text your buddy to go out for a beer or whatever, 617-297-8388. Also, we do have an email address to reach us off air, and a lot of you like to use the Messenger and Facebook, perfectly fine, but our email address is JoeMShow@gmail.com, and our office number is 508-603-9778. From the Box Drop Middlesex Mattress Outlet Studios, I'm Joe Mangiacotti, and joining us today, as he does usually once a month, is Jerry Doherty from Making Money Last. Heard weekdays, Monday through Friday, from 11 to 12 noon, right here on AM 830 WCRN. Good morning, Jerry.
Good morning, Joe, and happy, what are we into, daylight savings, or are we into...
Yeah, who forgot about that last night? Cam? Good morning, Cam. Cam running the board, flying us this morning. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Did you remember to do the clock before you went to sleep?
Oh, yeah. Well, no, I did my car clock this morning when I got up.
Okay, but
the phone automatically sets.
Right. So I actually woke up without anything, so you just wake up, and I think my internal clock is set for Saturday and Sundays. It's amazing. I wake up automatically. But today, I woke up a couple minutes of what would have been 3 a.m., but it was really 4 a.m. Because of the things. But the regular clock in the bedroom, it's not connected to anything. But my phone, smartphone, good reason they call it that. It's a very smart phone, Jerry.
Right, it takes care of everything. It's just, Joe, when you get to my age, I don't want to be losing any more time than I'm already losing. So going forward, even 1 hour is very, very painful for me. It's emotionally painful.
Right, absolutely. Well, first of all, Jerry, you are you're in the 8th year of Making Money Last, weekdays, 11 to 12 noon. And for a long time, we were doing the Political Thursdays, and you launched this past week a new show, but you've removed it from the financial show, and you're keeping that Making Money Last, that purist retirement planning. Tell everybody a little bit about what you've done with this 10 o'clock show now on Thursdays.
Well, with your help, Joe, we have the new 10 o'clock show on Thursdays. It's called Political Thursdays. Runs from 10 in the morning to 11 in the morning, immediately preceding my retirement planning show. And we just discussed, really, as I say, the tagline for the show is the interchange between politics, the economy, your pocketbook, and the country that you'd like to leave for your children. So that's really what that's really what it's all about, are those items. So that's what we talk about. You were very kind to join me last week, and you'll be joining me every other week. And, of course, we have Holly Robichard, who will be joining us a lot, and a few other guests as well.
Right. Every other week.
Every other week. Correct.
I'm busting you. Folks,
You're always happy to call in, Joe, anytime you want.
Yeah. You can always take us anywhere. Do you know that we are live streaming on the TuneIn app? So if you punch in WCRN on TuneIn, we're on your device. So you can keep us streaming whether you're in the car. What I like about that is you get out of the car and you just keep it on your phone and or your device, and you keep going, and that's a good deal. We're also live streaming on our Facebook page, my Facebook page, Joe Mangiacotti Show. And again, that is the same handle for all of the social media platforms, Joe Mangiacotti Show, M-A-N-G-I. The Facebook page does have a camera in the studio. That's fine, but the point is the audio is streaming there, and so there's multiple ways to listen to the show. There's a lot that we need to talk about today, and we'll do this, and we'll move through the couple hours, meanwhile taking your calls and input as we do this. But here we are on the 14th of March, with just a few days away from St. Patrick's Day, and all hell kind of broke loose last year right before St. Patrick's Day, and things were shut down, and that was the first real holiday that we were told that we needed to stay inside and keep our distance. But here we are today. Portland is burning. The courthouse is under fire again, and it's been happening for days. This is stuff that you don't really see out there in the news. Meanwhile, Minneapolis has boarded up their buildings because, of course, Chavez, we have the trial getting underway of the police officer with George Floyd, and they have concerns that the trial might not break the way they want it to break, so they've already boarded it up. But the Antifa crowd is there on the scene. They have actually created another autonomous zone, and they've blocked out that area where George Floyd died, and they're occupying that. And they're armed, and they threaten anyone. And mainstream media is not really covering this story, but if you try to go there and you're not welcome, you will be met with force, deadly force, including media, who has been told that they need to get out of there. So is this an insurrection? This is public property that has been cordoned off, and you are physically threatened with violence if you do not belong there. While citizens live in terror and people are shot on a regular basis, not covered on the mainstream media. We have the elimination of bail sweeping across the country, and we have like Hassan in L.A., who's not imposing bail, not showing up for hearings for parole so that they automatically get out. In this relief package that was billed to us as a relief package and a COVID package, which really isn't. 9% of it actually deals with COVID directly. And there's pork in there of all types, from the farm relief package that says that if you have a loan, you'll be forgiven, not 100% of the loan, but 120% of the loan, but only if you're non-white. So only non-white farmers will receive 100% forgiveness of their loan plus a 20% payback to them. Is this racist? We have 2,300 guardsmen down from 5,000 troops occupying the capital of the United States of America. Deployed in Washington, D.C., the chief of the National Guard says, enough, we're spread too thin, he's overridden. They're talking about extending it to May under threats with no intelligence to back it up. It's all manipulation. Meanwhile, 2,300 troops could do a lot at the border as it surges. That's where they really could be helpful. So this $500 million price tag to occupy the capital, where it's easier to cross the border into this country illegally than it is to take your family on a tour of Washington, D.C. And this administration is not disappointed on what is happening here at the border. They needed it to happen. They wanted it to happen. It's all connected, and I'll show you that in a moment. Stopping the border construction when Joe Biden came into office on Inauguration Day, a couple things kicked into gear right then. One is the cartels changed their MO. Modus operandi absolutely changed because they knew it was a different sheriff in town, and it was not Donald Trump, a guy that they feared and respected. So stopping the border construction, folks, it's not just stopping a fence or a barrier that's already been paid for in bought equipment, but it's stopping the digital enhancements, the electronic surveillances, the access roads. There is so much more to this border wall. It's just really an easy way of saying border security. But those access roads that were previously unobtainable by vehicle are not going to be finished. The enhanced digital electronic surveillance will stop. Meanwhile, 10% of illegals crossing, we find out a positive with COVID. But it doesn't matter. Well, we're told you have to stay in your homes and limit 25 people to a wedding and all of those restrictions that are placed on us. Illegal migrants are able to cross the border positive with COVID and get into buses being bussed all over the country. Who's concerned about that? Who's paying for this? Well, I'll tell you, the president of Trailways is very concerned. He's paying, the company, is paying for the testing. He's uncomfortable loading his buses up with positive people. While we restrict businesses and activities, we open our arms to the illegal immigrants who are COVID positive 19, and Joe Biden is not protecting us. That's one of the main functions of the President of the United States, is to protect its citizens. Now this $1.9 trillion relief package that was marketed as COVID relief prior to being passed, it's coming out now. It's loaded with pork and favors. It is a Pelosi payoff. It's a transfer of money from red states to blue states for the mismanagement. And here's where the connection is. You might not think that they're connected, that this most progressive bill in the history of our country passes at the same time. All this happens at the border. Here's the thing. Billions of dollars in this $1.9 trillion is being distributed to blue states and NGOs, non-government organizations, that with grants will be directed to help these illegal immigrants. You see, if they reach a sanctuary state or city, they can no longer be challenged for their ID or why they're here or if they should be here. So they, de facto, become American citizens. And so where the left hand was opening the border and encouraging these future Democratic voters to come on in, the right hand was creating this $2 trillion package to redistribute wealth and send all this money to the non-government organizations in the way of grants, because Joe Biden sent the message. He sent the message back on the debate stage, in the primaries, that he would sign amnesty and to invite everybody in. And the cartels know this. And the moment he was sworn in, things have changed. The president of Mexico has said that Joe Biden, the cartels now consider him the migrant president. We have record number of crossings, up 170% in the last month. While doing away with the steps that the Trump administration put into place that were working, from working with the Northern Triangle countries in Mexico, who were allowing people to stay in Mexico. In Mexico, were allowing asylum seekers, not from Mexico, from Guatemala and El Salvador, to stay in Mexico while their asylum trial was heard. But Joe Biden sent the message. If you can get in the United States, you're home free, baby. And they don't care about the bad press, the messaging, because it's all into the mission. And the mission is socialism. They feel that we should take care of the entire world. I'm Joe Mangiacotti from the Box Drop Middlesex Mattress Outlet Studios in Westborough, Massachusetts. You can join the conversation at 508-871-7000. What say you on that? I want to get, Jerry, your reaction to what I opened with. But let's jump to the phones because we have Jeremiah, who's been waiting patiently as I do my opening monologue. Good morning, Jeremiah. Thank you for waiting, man.
Yeah, it's evidently, I guess, mom and dad are words we can't use anymore. That's what I've heard in the news.
Well, it is. And yesterday I actually covered that pretty well. The Grace Baptist or Grace School in New York, yeah. $57,000 a year to go there. A 12-page memo goes out saying, no, you can't use mom and dad anymore. You can't use brother and sister, boyfriend or girlfriend, husband and wife. No.
Well, the other thing, too, I mean, that's not even the end point. It's going to get worse than that. But here's the problem. The way history is taught, we stopped. I'm on the cusp. I'm that old right now where I was on the cusp where we stopped using dates for context. We got to get the feel of the history rather than the dates and the chronological order of what happened. That's why you get pig ignorant statements like, we got to tear down Abraham Lincoln's statue because he did nothing for the African American after the war. Well, the war ended April 9th, 1865. And then 6 days later, a devout Democrat snuck up behind him in Ford's Theater and shot him in the back of the head. His motive for that was because Lincoln said that he was going to give the vote to African Americans. That so inflamed him that he shot Lincoln. Well, Lincoln gave his life for the freedom of slaves, if you break it down. And then that also spawns off. I used to live in Rochester, New York. I used to go to Kelsey Park, and in there was a statue to probably one of the most noble men during the Civil War. His name was Frederick Douglass. And Frederick Douglass lobbied Lincoln. He actually lobbied Lincoln. And these morons tear his statue down. I'm sorry, it's not racist. That's not an act of American liberty, tearing down his statue. That's an act of utter pig ignorance. There's nothing racial in that statement. You can't say that. And we've got to put a stop to this. We've got to sit there and tell the teachers, okay, you don't want to come back to work? Good. We'll get teachers that go in there and teach American history the way it was.
Right.
I mean,
Jeremiah, I have no problem with, and Trump would probably have done this. Do you remember Ronald Reagan's way he handles his answer to the air traffic controllers when they thought that they had the entire country over a barrel?
Could you refresh my memory?
Sure thing. Ronald Reagan said, actually, you don't. You're all fired.
Yeah,
and no one in the world, and I am not hyperbolic here, in the world, because I'll tie it into something in a second, thought that would happen. Nobody ever thought that the President of the United States would fire air traffic controllers because we run on our air traffic. Everything depends on it. But Ronald Reagan was not going to be held hostage by them. And why I said the world took notice, because years later, after the wall came down in the Cold War and we outspent the Russians and they could put their tanks on the borders, but they couldn't move them because they couldn't put gas in them, we find out from KGB notes and records that what made them come to the table and sit up and pay attention was that act by Ronald Reagan, because they looked at that and they said, any guy who will fire the air traffic controllers and put what he thinks is best for the country ahead of all else, we have no idea what he will do, and he will do what's best for the country, and we need not to provoke this guy. We need to go to the table and talk to him. That's in the KGB notes.
And you're saying that the current president doesn't have the intestinal fortitude?
Absolutely not. First of all, no. We'll talk a little bit about his address on Thursday night, Jeremiah. But my gut feeling on that and watching that is he was speaking at us, not with us or to us. He is not in control of what's being written. It's as if you could sense that what's being written is these progressive progressive young staff and people surrounding him. And I maintain that the invisible hand of Barack Obama is at play here.
Well, the other thing, too, that a lot of people are, the only way this thing's going to stop is the Democrats going to have to stand up and say, look, this is ridiculous. Cut it out. This is not good. It's got to be a moment like that when they had the communists, what was his name, Joe McCarthy, and they finally pointed at him and said, have you no shame? That's got to be the moment that we start, the pendulum comes swinging back, more toward getting out of the complete left.
Absolutely. Jeremiah, let me ask you a question. Do you listen to the show on a regular basis on the weekends?
I do, yes.
Okay.
I'm an old guy and I get up early.
Good. Well, fantastic. I just noticed I don't think I've have I spoken with you before? I think I have a while
long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago.
I think Tracy, what's her name, was on.
Tracy, yeah, right.
Well,
running for rep.
Well, she could have gone. She could have beaten him if she had, but I couldn't get through to her. I mean, she was like, the one thing about socialists and all of that, our own representative. I'm sorry. He claims that he was an expert at gardening. At Latin American agriculture. That's why he went down to these junkets, which has nothing to do with his job. He's supposed to represent.
Yeah, he was kind of into the whole Cuba situation.
Yeah,
and he likes to
on
go
top
back
of that,
there.
why did he go down to Latin America? It's to recruit illegal voters. That's all they do down there.
Yeah,
and they got to get after him. We got to throw these people out of the. We got to throw the bums out.
Got to throw the bums out. You know, Jeremiah, that is a slogan that we have to embrace big time. But I've got to run. Thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Folks, you're listening to the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN, 508-871-7000. Jerry,
Yes.
So I had a little bit of the diarrhea of the mouth here to open up and kind of let people know what I'm thinking and where I'm at. I want to get your reaction.
Well, Joe, I'm happy that you did because, I needed that extra half an hour of sleep.
Oh, wow. Oh, Teddy.
No, I'm
Sick
only
'em.
Joe. I'm only kidding you. No, I do want to pick up on one thing that Jeremiah said, though, when he was getting into the whole thing about, the way history is taught today.
Yes.
And this whole cancel culture, which is, I thought, where he was going to go with that. And I think it's very important, that we get back to some of these, very basic things that we were taught when we were in school, like the old George Santayana, in his book, The Life of Reason, where he had down, those who don't learn from the lessons of history are doomed to repeat its failures. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but that essentially is the sentence. And that's why with history as our guide, we can avoid making missteps that we've already made.
Mm-hmm.
This is why we should be teaching history accurately. And this is why this whole cancel culture, trying to rewrite history, is so illogical, and it will lead to nothing but, the ruination of mankind. I truly do believe that. And then I think, the second point that he brought up about, the immigration policies, he is correct. Jeremiah is correct. The Biden administration, through executive order, and then just through other actions that they've taken since Biden has been in office, they really have just completely eradicated the Trump immigration policies. And they're moving in a different direction, and this is what's led to this crisis at the border. That's where this has led, and it will continue.
Absolutely. And again, folks, there's a connection between this and what's happening at the border. We know is future Democratic voters. We get that, and it's almost cliche at this point. But what's more sinister here and deeper is that this was a 1-2 punch in the country that I'm not sure everybody realizes that that's happening. So the powers to be in the bigger picture needed this multi-trillion dollar, and we're going to round it up to 2 trillion, folks, here, even though there's a substantial amount of money in the first COVID package that has not been spent yet. And this money from the $1.9 trillion is going to be spent over years. But a large portion of this, and we can talk about some of the breakdown. I mean, this is commonly on the Hill now known as Pelosi's payoff, right? I mean, we've got $50 million going to Planned Parenthood, a couple $100 million to museum and library services, $270 million to the Endowment of Arts and Humanities, $600 million to Pelosi's home of San Francisco because of their management shortfalls, $1.5 billion to Amtrak, $12 billion in foreign aid. I can keep going on and on. The question is, what does any of that have to do with COVID-19 and bringing not just the vaccinations to the people who want them, but saving those businesses, and mostly family businesses, that have tanked and gone under, while the big box stores were able to have unlimited number of people in them, right? Mm-hmm. We have governors who have picked the winners and losers in this situation, who shut down these second, third, fourth generation restaurants with the strike of a pen. And we see in New York, the assembly saying, our governor's power hungry, and one of the first things we need to do is retrieve those powers. They canceled Governor Cuomo's emergency powers because they saw he was out of control. So we have to talk about what is in that bill, what was the real reason for it, because opening the borders, Jerry, is the second punch in a 1-2 punch move. They do, folks, come together, and billions of dollars from the 1.9 trillion are going to sanctuary cities and states where they will be distributed to non-government organizations, NGOs, to address the needs of those illegal immigrants who don't become illegal as if it's a big video game. You get over the wall and you make it to a sanctuary city, ding, 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 you got 100 points, and you won that level, and you can move to the next. We have to take a break here on the Joe Mangiacotti Show in the Sunday edition. Jerry Doherty from Making Money Last in studio with us. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Stick with us. I'm Joe Mangiacotti. Hey folks, Joe Mangiacotti here, and you might have picked up on the fact that I've recently moved and was taking the time to purge the clutter and freshen up some of the furniture and decor. And there is no better item to freshen up than your bed. That's right, your bed is the most important piece of furniture you have. After all, you spend more than a third of your life on it. I checked out the huge, once family-owned stores with tens of thousands of square feet of showroom and warehouses and movie theaters and food courts and shows and the overhead that goes with them. But then I discovered a true family-owned shop. John Rosenfeld and his son have a small showroom and warehouse right in Metro West, 50 Main Street, Ashland. John and his family are actually there in person. They do keep hours, but will meet you by appointment. That's right. John will meet you when it's convenient for you. I first bought a mattress from the big store the brothers used to own and a power base that moved the head and feet, but then I met John and checked out his showroom at 50 Main Street in Ashland and online at boxdropmiddlesex.com and ended up with a better mattress and power base that also heats and massages, all for less than half of what I was going to spend at the other place. Box Drop is a discount mattress store, and John specializes in clearance and closeouts and buys directly from the manufacturer with low overhead and just family employees, passing the savings on to you, and you can see it reflected in the price every day. Click boxdropmiddlesex.com or call John on his cell. This is his cell number, 508-579-9309. That's 508-579-9309. And find John on Facebook at boxdropmiddlesex. John loves referrals, and this is the best referral I've given so far this year. Dropboxmiddlesex.com.
This is Sean Burke, President of the Licensed Private Detectives Association of Massachusetts, asking you to visit us at lpdam.org when you think you need a private investigator. Don't let your emotions negatively affect your future. Get your answers through a Massachusetts licensed private investigator. Get the facts without risking your credibility by unknowingly committing a criminal offense. You need a license to perform investigations in Massachusetts. What are some types of work that requires a license? Any type of surveillance, interviewing someone for a third party, background and asset checks are just a few examples. For more on this, visit us at lpdm.org and tune into AM 830 WCRN Sunday mornings at 7:30 for case files from the LPDM or anytime at lpdmcasefiles.com.
We know why you're awake. Your child is about to get their driver's license. Levante's Auto School offers one-week driving programs to help make sure your child stays safe and focused behind the wheel.
877 Drive Ed. Who's Ed?
That's the number for Levante's Auto School.
Learn to drive safely and efficiently. Visit one of our 5 locations throughout Massachusetts. Click LevantesAutoSchool.com.
Levante's Auto School shows you how to learn the rules and keep your cool. 877 Drive Ed.
Who's Ed? That's the number for Levante's Auto School.
Bam! Bam! On that 15.
Out with Joe. You're listening to Out with Joe. Out with Joe.
Slap some bacon on a biscuit and let's go.
Oh, this is the worst looking hat I ever saw. Well, you buy a hat like this, I'll bet you get a free bowl of soup, huh?
Welcome to this edition of Out with Joe, brought to you by Nothing But Cakes in White City Plaza, Shrewsbury. I'm Joe Mangiacotti. This week, we thought we'd take a look at how much to tip your delivery driver during coronavirus. Extreme situations call for extreme tipping. It's the right thing to do. Tipping is an unavoidable part of U.S. culture at any time. But as we rely more on food, grocery, and restaurant delivery during the coronavirus outbreak, the amount you should be tipping is climbing. Delivery drivers put themselves at greater risk of exposure to the COVID-19 disease that so far resulted in over 362,000 confirmed cases in the U.S. alone, so that you don't have to go outdoors. They're also often collecting minimum wage without hazard pay. The suggested amount is to tip at least 20% on all takeout and delivery orders, or more to show appreciation at a time when the unemployment rate has spiked to reach an all-time high in the U.S. So how much to tip at restaurants and bars in general? Well, let's look at that first. The good news is that you're not expected to tip the same amount at a five-star restaurant as you would when ordering at the counter. But tips are acceptable, appreciated, and even expected for a person who serves you and cleans up when you're done. The same goes for delivery and carryout. So in general, coffee shop baristas, $1 or so per drink, more for complicated orders like half-calf, no-fat soy latte with light foam and extra shot, whatever that means, or less for simple orders, hot water in a tea bag. Bartenders, $1 to $2 per drink, more for mixed drinks, less for drafts, or 20% if you're running a tab. Dine-in restaurant service, about 20%, or more for outstanding service. Buffet servers, 10 to 15%, depending on how many plates, forks, and refills you go through. Fast casual counter service, up to $1 for taking your order, $2 to $5 if they bus your table or deliver your food. Restaurant carryout service, 10% more for large, complicated orders, such as baby shower or office party. Food delivery drivers, 10% or up to 20% or more during hazardous road conditions or special circumstances, such as holidays or big game night. But the last two, restaurant carryout service and food delivery drivers, it is during the COVID-19 pandemic, and they are not getting hazardous pay. And don't forget that the minimum wage for these type of employees are far less than the standard minimum wage in any given state. Other things to keep in mind when tipping: cash is preferable to credit, but giving a credit card tip is better than going short on cash. It's rude to leave intentionally small tip, like a handful of change after a $50 meal. If you have exceptionally poor service, talk to the manager. Leaving no tip might be appropriate in extreme cases. The likelihood that a server will spit into your food is relatively low, so we don't recommend tipping solely to avoid that type of behavior. Rather, tip to acknowledge the work or service that has been done. For more on dining, entertainment, and news, click OutWithJoe.com and follow us on social media at OutWithJoe. Out with Joe has been brought to you by Nothing Bundt Cakes in White City Plaza in Shrewsbury, on Facebook at Nothing Bundt Cakes Shrewsbury. Have you heard of the hottest new bakery around? I know you heard about it right here. My friend Al has opened Nothing Bundt Cake in the White City Plaza in Shrewsbury. Nothing Bundt Cake is a bakery chain and is locally owned and operated by my friend Al. They have bundt cakes ranging from bite-sized to tiered, plus platters, candles, and cards. For any occasion, function, or just to have around the house or office, stop by and check them out. Everything is baked from scratch and on site. Nothing beats a sweet surprise. And until you try one of Al's bundt cakes, you haven't tried a real bundt cake. Stop by and ask for Al. Tell him Joe told you to stop by. 98 Boston Turnpike, White City Plaza, near Planet Fitness, Shrewsbury, and on Facebook as well, Nothing Bundt Cake Shrewsbury.
To join the conversation, call 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. Now, here's your host, Joe Mangiacotti.
All right, folks. Welcome back to the second half of the first hour of the Joe Mangiacotti Show, Sunday edition here on AM 830 WCRN. You can listen to us, of course, on AM 830, AM 730. We're on the TuneIn app, streaming at WCRN, which is real easy to do. Don't forget, you can tell Alexa to play WCRN, and she'll do that, no questions asked whatsoever. She'll just do it. No back talk at all, Jerry. We're also streaming live on my Facebook page at Joe Mangi Show, M-A-N-G-I, Joe Mangi Show. Yeah, there's a camera in the studio. You probably don't see Teddy today because it's trained on Jerry Doherty. So there's a good-looking guy in the studio for once. But we do have the audio streaming. So that's the point, is you can listen in many different ways. And Jerry Doherty is in studio, who not only hosts Making Money Last, but is the principal at Boston Independence Group right down the street here at 182 Turnpike Road in Westboro, with the very memorable number of 877-772-1776.
Can't get any easier than that, Jim.
Cannot get easier than that. And do you have anything you want to share as far as that coming up? The webpage has some good stuff, right?
Yeah, we just did a new, at great expense, and I'm not just kidding, a new video on our website, which is BostonIndependenceGroup.com. And if you go to that website and just click on the webinar tab, that video will pop right up. And it's a 25-minute video that shows you how to build your own retirement plan.
That's good stuff.
It really is good stuff. So they can just visit BostonIndependenceGroup.com. And again, just click on the webinar tab and the video will just start playing.
Yeah. I think we shared it on the Facebook page too, didn't we?
I think we did.
Yeah. So it's up there too. So, and do that, for the show, for Making Money Last. If you go to Facebook, it's Jerry MML, and shortcut to that, and you'll be able to see posts from Jerry and, of course, the podcasts of Making Money Last, and now including, of course, I assume we'll be doing the Political Thursday on there as well. Well, we'll figure that out. We haven't even talked about that. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. And I wanted to just take a moment and point out to this story that in Iowa, we have a situation where the Democrats really are basically trying to steal back a seat that was won by a Republican. And what's interesting is because I've proposed or I've put this out here for discussion before, folks, as far as the presidential election. You know, we talk about the irregularities. I always miss that word. Irregularities of the election. The did or didn't they did it. These votes that were harvested and that they were fraudulent and people voted. Say the election does turn. Say it turns out that Donald Trump did get the 270, right? Now what? I mean, do you undo the presidency of Joe Biden? He has been certified and sworn in. So as far as that goes, he is the 46th president. That's never happened. Now, we have a situation in Iowa where that's exactly what the Democrats want to do, is they want to unseat a sitting congresswoman in that seat. And it hasn't happened since 1985, I think, when Tip O'Neill went along with ousting a Republican. Of course, he was a Democrat. So the Democratic-run House of Representatives, they're open to this overturning. And we're talking about, now we're down at 6 votes. It wasn't 6 votes the night of the election, right? She won on a decent margin, but it triggered recounts and votes were discovered, right? We're back to this. Votes are discovered. And we're being told in one scenario that, look, that's what it is. It's certified, it's done. You can't keep doing this. But it's as if the Democrats here want to keep counting until it goes their way, Jerry.
Yeah, well, I think the two situations are completely analogous, Joe. I think you laid it out pretty well. You do have this representative in Iowa who, it was a razor-thin election. Let's remember, there were 400,000 votes cast in that election, and she won by 6, SIX, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 votes. So that's pretty darn razor-thin. Now, the election has been certified, so the winner has indeed been certified, very similar to what we saw Congress do in the presidential election back on January 6th. So the certification has been made in the election, and this woman is deemed the winner of the election. Now they want to go back after the certification, post-certification, and change this. Now Nancy Pelosi does in this Iowa situation. It's completely analogous. So what do you do? So does this open the door if it turns out that, it can be proved that Donald Trump was actually the winner of the election Do you go back now and unwind that election, as they're doing here? It's true. This starts to open up a can of worms. I think, once elections are certified, I think that's about the time that you have to move on. I would assume that in most elections, the challenges happen before the certification, as we did see in the presidential election.
Well, and that's what we're saying here.
Yeah, and relative, my final comment, relative to Joe Biden being the president, I've been saying on my own program and on Political Thursdays that Joe Biden is going to be the O.J. Simpson of presidents. I think that most Americans who are clear thinking, they understand that something really was wrong here, but he got away with it. It's essentially 2020 is the O.J. election. It's a very difficult thing sometimes to prove what we all know to actually be true, but to prove it in a court of law. And that's the system that we have, and this is why we have courts, and this is why we have a process to move through. But Joe Biden is effectively the O.J. president.
Yeah, that's a good analogy, actually. Well put. And it, to me, I'm amused at all the things that would come, right? If that was it, and he's certified, does Donald Trump become the 47th president or the 45th with the second term? Does the 46th presidency become moot? Like, in all of those executive orders, are they all instantly reversed? I mean, it's such a mess that there is a point, once it's certified, regardless how you got there, I think we have to live with that. And this goes for our situation here in Iowa, where we have the Republican and Representative Marinette Miller Meeks. She is the Republican who's been seated in the House of Representatives. All right, folks, 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Lines are open and available. Jerry Dory in studio with me. He joins the Joe Mangiacotti Show once a month, usually the second weekend of the month. We do that, and this weekend it's the Sunday, and that's great. 508-871-7000. I wanted to, we're going to get to President Biden's Thursday night address, and we're going to talk about H.R. 1 and the border and all that. But I thought, Jerry, that we should touch on the situation in New York, because it has national ramifications. And as far as the COVID part of it, and this is where last year on March 25th, when Governor Cuomo issued that order that nursing homes had to take positive COVID patients. And up until that point, they had not one incidence of COVID, by the way, until he started to put them in. And you've seen him in these press conferences. He did one the other day. It was a phone thing. You couldn't see him. An operator controlled the media that talked to him, and he couldn't help himself. Right? They all, despite the president's call for unity and coming together, they all still have to take a shot at Donald Trump. And Joe Biden did it on his Thursday night's address. Cuomo's doing it and saying that he was fighting with Donald Trump in that press release he did on Friday. And the interesting thing is, he was praising Donald Trump when it was happening. He asked for help. The SS Comfort didn't just fire itself up and go to New York Harbor all by itself. Matter of fact, the president, meaning Trump, was told it would take months, at least weeks and weeks, to get this ship ready. And he said, you got a few days. And it was ready, and it was in the harbor, and it was ready to take patients. The Javits Center turned into a field hospital. He didn't take advantage of this, but more importantly, he issued that order, and that was bad enough. But when he found out that the feds were looking into things, they altered numbers. They altered the data. They hid information. And that is a real crime, when people are dying in hospitals and they're dying in nursing homes. And he's not the only governor, right? We have Governor Whitman is facing possible charges at this point.
Right.
And then you take this, and that didn't seem to be enough, Jerry, to, for people to be outraged. And then all of a sudden, the sexual misconduct accusations come out. And one's not enough. Two's not enough. Three really wasn't enough. I mean, what's the ratio if you're a prominent Democrat versus a Republican? Is it 6-1? If you're Republican, one accusation derails you, but you need at least a half a dozen if you're Democrat? I don't know what the formula is. What's your take on that?
It's the hypocrisy.
There it is. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you for joining us. Jerry summed everything up for us.
Exactly, Joe. It's the hypocrisy. You have Andrew Cuomo, right? Who we call Governor Dandy Cuomo.
Randy Dandy.
Governor Dandy Cuomo, right? You have Andrew Cuomo, who for years has been telling people like Brett Kavanaugh that upon accusations and other people in the state assembly in New York, upon accusations you have to resign. There's a cloud over you and everything else. We now have 7 women who have come out. The hypocrisy there, and then also it's just consistent. When you look at Andrew Cuomo, it's consistent. All of this, his grandstanding over the ship Comfort that you mentioned that Donald Trump willingly gave to him. His grandstanding over the ventilators. What am I going to do with 2,000 ventilators? Turns out he needed nowhere near 2,000 ventilators, as President Trump had told him. Then you look at the Javits Center. It's right on down the line. Then you hear the accusations. For goodness sakes, you even have Bill de Blasio, who has turned against Andrew Cuomo. And the reason is that he said he's a bully. All of this is just consistent with his behavior. And it's interesting, too, when you look at some of these people who you see in the national news, it's so true. What psychologists say about so much of our brain is based upon our gut. Our gut tells us more than the raw data that we take into our brain. That's just the way that the brain works. Sometimes we have feelings about things. We know a car that we're looking at is going to go through that red light. There's nothing to indicate that they're going to that's hard evidence, but we just know that it's going to. For years, I think many people like me have looked at Andrew Cuomo and we've said, this is not a good guy. Now, we've listened to some words, and maybe the words, the literal interpretation of the words is okay, and maybe his actions seem okay, but now all of this coming out, it just confirms what my gut has told me for a long period of time, that Andrew Cuomo is not a good guy. And especially these accusations from these women, now apparently a 7th one has come out. This is all obviously just control stuff. He wants everybody to know that he's governor. He's in charge. You are going to do what I tell you to do.
Well, I got to tell you, the article, in the 7th, and this is interesting because you have a clip. I was watching a clip of Jen Psaki, right, make reference to Cuomo the other day, and she said 6. I mean, the clip wasn't even 24 hours old, and it was already outdated because a 7th woman had come forward. And she had written a great article, and you should check it out if you have a chance to do that, because she is saying, and her name, by the way, is Jessica Bakeman. And I know people who thought it was Bateman. It's Bakeman with a K. And she wrote this, and what was interesting, Jerry, she even says, I never got the sensation or feeling that he wanted to sleep with me. It was all about power and control, right, and putting her in her place. And she was 25 years old, working in the State House as a reporter. And she's put in this position where she does not want to be near him or go anywhere that he is. But her job, you're 25 years old. You're going into a very tough industry, journalism. Right? I mean, it's journalism.
This sounds reminiscent of Monica Lewinsky, doesn't it?
It is.
That particular situation. And when you think about that for a minute, I don't know how old Andrew Cuomo is, but let's just say he's 60. He looks to me like he's probably about 60 or so. He's roughly my age, somewhere in that range. Andrew Cuomo, you have a 25-year-old intern, this 25-year-old employee who's coming in, and Andrew Cuomo is so lecherous that he allegedly made advances toward this 25-year-old. You think about that in your own life. It's absolutely, it's among the most despicable things that somebody can do. It's absolutely analogous to this Monica Lewinsky thing. He appears to be, from these 7 allegations, and I'm sure that there are many more other people who don't want to come forward, who don't want to make themselves, prey to the press and to the public and be in this public spotlight, because we all know what happens to people when they go up against, especially Democrats, the progressive left, in the spotlight. Their lives are destroyed. But when you look at this behavior is just so outrageous, but it's such despicable behavior, lecherous behavior by a dirty old man.
Yeah. And Jessica Bakeman, again, check out the story. I think I shared it on my Facebook page, but she talks about how even the Cuomo's top staff members would find pleasure, even glee, in torturing the reporters.
Right.
And we know that he has aides who make those calls. Those are the same calls that, if you go back to Clinton, Steffi Stephanopoulos was the one who used to make those calls to those women who, when they came forward about Bill Clinton, and he's on tape, right? There's that tape circulating of Stephanopoulos talking to them and telling them they're basically nothing, right? They're nobody, and you're going to go up against this powerful guy and this powerful family. So it's disgusting that happens in America. And Cuomo is so full of himself. I mean, they did this whole thing, Jerry. I don't know if you read about this in her article, the mock Boy Scout badges, and he called them Cuomo Scouts, and they'd put in Andrew We Trust. So he's not full of himself or anything. In Andrew We Trust on these badges, and referred to it as Camp Cuomo, and that they survived Camp Cuomo.
Now, can you imagine, looking back at like Monica Lewinsky, you have Dr. Lewinsky, apparently this, successful Democrat, successful doctor, Democrat donor, I believe from California, whose daughter gets this job in the White House, or you have somebody like this young, woman, this 25-year-old woman who's accusing now Andrew Cuomo, who has some connection and gets this job as an intern in the White House. And all of a sudden, in the White House, you're exposed to Governor Dandy Cuomo.
Dandy, where you gonna go now? Who you gonna run to? All your little life, you're chasing all the girls. They can't resist your smile. They long for
Oh, my goodness. The thing about it is, right, there are some pretty revealing quotes that he has. I mean, he is just, and here's my prediction on this, and I think we talked the other day, and I said this to you, that Andrew Cuomo will not resign from the governorship unless he sees the numbers. In other words, the only way that he is removed is if they impeach him. And in the New York legislature, or assembly people, I believe they called there, it's somewhere around 77 to 76 Democrats or members. And don't get this wrong, folks. New York legislature is 100, but it's all Democrat. The Republicans don't even have veto numbers, so they're powerless here. And these are prominent. We've got the two senators from New York calling for it. AOC's calling for it. And the only way he can be removed is A, if they can impeach him, and B, if he resigns. And he will not resign and put that on his CV, but he won't allow an impeachment. So if he sees they have the numbers and that they're going to actually impeach him, he will, in fact, then resign. But he's saying straight out, his quotes, I'm not going to resign. We have a teetering New York City, right? He says, my usual custom is to kiss and hug and make that gesture. It's a creepy gesture. Just because you do it doesn't mean it's okay, dude. He says, I've never touched anyone inappropriately. I never touched anyone inappropriately. Quote him. That's his quote. He says, kissing is my usual customary way of greeting. It's 2021, Governor.
Yeah, and Joe,
that's not okay anymore.
I do get it when you say he doesn't want that in his CV, on his curriculum vitae, but it is going to be on his criminal vitae, eventually his CV for federal prison, I'm sure. Yeah. A lot of people are calling for him to go to jail.
Yeah. We're short on time, but let me go to the phones real quick, 508-871-7000. Martin from Webster. Good morning, sir. Thanks for holding. We've got a couple minutes.
Morning, Joe.
Morning.
Morning, Jerry.
Morning.
I used to think that term limits would be the solution to some of these problems, but given what you said about Biden and how you kind of believe that the invisible hand of Obama is kind of controlling these things, it's such a discouraging thing to listen to,
Sorry to do that to you on a Sunday morning, Martin, but
yeah, well,
it is what it is.
I think about these things all the time. I work in a union shop, and I actually belong to 2 unions, and we, as a group on the floor, I've seen a shift. Most of these people are Trump supporters, and they're union members. But the international, they're the ones that are pushing the Democratic candidates, you know. Not to get too far off the subject, but I don't know, you know, I thought term limits would do something.
I get what you're saying, right? Term limits, okay, that's good. And all of a sudden our senators and our representatives do what our founding fathers thought, and that was take a break from your fields and your farms and your law practice or your general store. You make the horse carriage, multi-day or week trip to D.C. You serve your time, and it's obligatory and it's a nuisance. It doesn't make you a career politician and a multimillionaire by your second term. And you do a term or maybe 2, and then you return to your civilian life. And the next person takes over because they wanted a government of the people, by the people. But that's not what it is. And I think that if we could make a glimpse, or give a glimpse to the founding fathers of today's political landscape, they would have put term limits in the Constitution. Because I don't think they envisioned people being 40, 50 years in Washington, D.C.
So when you look at Joe Biden, I think, Martin, you bring up some really good points. When you look at Joe Biden, number one, and I understand the president does have term limits.
I'm sorry. Martin, you're welcome to hold. We're against the clock. Jerry, hold your thought, because I know where you're going with that, and it's excellent to go there. Martin, you're welcome to hold on if you'd like to. But I have to take a break here on the Joe Mangiacotti Show for the 7 o'clock. Stick with us. Back in just a moment, folks.
WACE Chicopee and WCRN Worcester.
7 o'clock.
Hey folks, Joe Mangiacotti from the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Reminding you, talk radio is the immune system to the partisan, bias, political rhetoric attacking us on a daily basis. Get inoculated. The Joe Mangiacotti Show is your vaccine. Join me weekend mornings, 6 to 8.
I want to tell you what Cantiani Insurance has been able to do for me and Teddy. We stopped in to see Paul Sr. and the great staff at 318 Plantation Street. They've been handling my car and business insurance for years. Teddy was making his way around the office, and they let me know they now offer pet insurance. For a fraction of what one visit to the vet was for Teddy, they could cover him for a whole year. I know you treat your furry family members like any other family member, and as well as I do Teddy. The professional staff at Cantiani's has been providing courteous service for over 40 years, with integrity and personalized service, making sure that your insurance actually protects you and your family. With 2 locations, the 318 Plantation Street in Worcester and East Douglas Insurance Agency, located at 306 Main Street in Douglas. For home, auto, business insurance, and now pet insurance, click CantianiAgency.com or call 508-791-2088. 508-791-2088.
If you were to ask any retiree in a word, they would tell you that retirement is all about income. Income in retirement is a permission slip to enjoy life. Income provides the freedom to spend money each month, knowing that more will arrive next month and the month after that. As important as it is to accumulate assets for your retirement, it's equally, if not more important, to maximize the income being generated from your assets. My name is Jerry Doherty, and my radio program, Making Money Last, has been heard right here on WCRN. Well, do you know if your retirement income is as high as it could be? Are you living off less than you should be? Well, I'd like to offer you a complimentary review to answer that very question. Simply call my office at 877-772-1776. I'm conveniently located right on Route 9 in Westboro. Again, my number is 877-772-1776. Let's increase your income today.
So, are you tired of being tired? Well, then it's time to get the tea. Hey, it's Lisa here to tell you about this all-natural, all-organic tea I've been drinking that has had great results for over 20 years. It's called Life Change Tea, and it's specially formulated to help detoxify and cleanse your kidneys, liver, colon, and blood all at once. The colon is one of the most ignored organs in the human body. The faster that waste is eliminated from the body, the less time that waste sits in our intestines, spreading toxins to our bloodstream. This tea helps cleanse chemicals caused by outside intruders from our entire digestive system. And get this, weight loss can be a side effect. And with continued use of the tea, you can experience clearer, healthier, younger looking skin, increased energy, and a happier outlook on life. So if you're tired of being tired, get the Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. And like me, you'll be glad you did.
All right, folks, welcome back to Hour 2 of the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. From the Dropbox Middlesex Mattress Studios, let's not forget that. New sponsors of ours, they're at 50 Main Street in Ashland. All right, check them out on Facebook, check them out online. And I got to tell you, as you know, with the recent move, I am purging a lot of stuff and freshening up furniture. And one of the things you need to do is your mattress, right? We spend a third of our life on our mattresses, some of us even more, because you read and you work in bed. Anyway, I ended up buying I went to the big store, right?
Andrew Cuomo spends a lot of time on his mattress.
Yeah.
It's a very good point.
I don't know. It sounds like it might be in hallways and offices, too, so you don't know. Maybe he has a traveling inflatable mattress. But check him out anyway. 508-871-7000. Martin from Webster was on the phone with us, and he had a couple points to make. And, Jerry, let me let you respond, because I know that it triggered a couple thoughts. Martin was able to trigger a couple thoughts for you.
No, I think Martin brings up some really good points. The first point that he brought up was term limits. And, Martin, I'm totally on the same page with you. When you look at Joe Biden, for example, you know, Joe Biden has now been in office for 50 years. The United States is only 245 years old. That's it. So Joe Biden, roughly speaking, it's a little bit more than this percentage, but Joe Biden, roughly speaking, has been in office for 20% of the time that the United States of America has been in existence. Just think about that. 20% of the time that the United States of America has been in existence. Joe Biden is part of the problem. I don't know what makes somebody think that the person who helped to create the problems over the past 50 years, when you look at depressions, when you look at recessions, when you look at oil embargoes, when you look at non-ending wars in Afghanistan, when you look at Vietnam, all these different things, Joe Biden was there for each of those events, and Joe Biden was complicit in all of those events. 20% of the time that the United States has been in existence, he's there. Yet he's supposed to be the guy who takes us into the 21st century. I just don't understand the logic in all of that. The second thing that you brought up, Martin, that I think is very interesting, when you mentioned the union reps versus the rank and file union members, and you said most of them, the rank and file, are Trump supporters, but it's really kind of the union reps that are promoting more of a Democrat agenda. And I think what you see is this misconception that Democrats are somehow pro-union. That is not the case. I mean, the Keystone Pipeline is just the latest victim in showing how Joe Biden has a war on unions. And, you know, when you look at this, we have more jobs now going overseas, and we will under these Biden policies, which is only going to hurt unions. It's not going to drag Detroit out of their, misery that they've had for the past half century. The damage to the energy sector that this president has created and the jobs that he has destroyed because of what he's done to the energy sector. And the union members, people just like you, Martin, they're told by people like John Kerry, back in power, that they are just going to have to retrain and get new jobs and be part of the 21st century. That's what is happening to unions right now. So there really is this disconnect, I think, between union reps who still have their allegiances to the Democrat Party, and the rank and file who see things clearly and who are voting for policies that are actually pro-union policies. Joe?
Yeah, Martin, before I let you go, any follow-up on that, or is that pretty much example of your
agree.
frustration here?
Yeah, I completely agree. One of the problems, I think, is that people run for office. They run because they want to be a politician, and what they're supposed to be running for is to be public servant. And we sort of lost that over the years. The other thing I wanted to point out, the shift of Democrats. If JFK was alive today, I think he'd be seen as a racist and a
definitely a Republican. If you look at his tax stands, right where he was on inheritance tax, income tax, and he said it straight out: cut the taxes, and the economy will do better. He would not be accepted on the Democrat or today's version of the Democratic Party at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Talk about lecherous people.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we're on the topic. All right, Martin, thank you so much for the call. I really appreciate it, and thanks for listening. All right, folks, 508-871-7000 from the Box Drop Middlesex Mattress Outlet Studios. I'm Joe Mangiacotti with Jerry Doherty. And I want to move the conversation, Jerry, towards and like I had said at this morning when I first came on in my monologue, and I talked about what's happening between this bill and what's going on at the border, and we also need to talk about this H.R. 1 bill, and this is because we're talking about term limits and what's happening. This is another step. So what you have to see here is that $2 trillion bill had to happen while the borders were open. And there's a whole bunch of discussion, Jerry, when it comes to the border that the mainstream media does not address, and the Democrats don't want to talk about it either. And that is that the money being made in human trafficking at this point is actually more lucrative than the drug money. These unaccompanied children are not unaccompanied in the sense that, do you think that 1,400 miles from the border, they left home one morning and said, "See you, Mom and Dad, I'm going to America" at 14 years old, at 16 years old? Mm-hmm. No. They're either accompanied by their parents to the border and then sent over unaccompanied, and then they'll get over, and they know that they cannot be deported, that they'll be taken care of, they'll be shipped off, right, to a relative or somebody somewhere in the States, and then the parents will go in and they'll reconnect. But what else is happening? Well, guess what they're finding at the border, Jerry? They're finding tags on their wrists, like a hospital tag or a nightclub tag. The cartels are actually inventorying these people. They know who they are, but more importantly, they know who their families are back in Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador. And those unaccompanied children are going to receive orders. This is nothing less than Cold War sleeper agents being placed into the United States. And you may roll your eyes or chuckle at something at that, but give me a better analogy. They are being placed into this country under obligation to cartels. Then they're paying their way, so they have debts that they have to pay back. And the fact that we as a country, that the Biden administration has sent this message, eliminated the policies put in by the Trump administration that were working. For the first time in a long time, we had policies working. The stay in Mexico until your hearing, where 85% of them are unsuccessful, right? We had the zero tolerance. We had these policies, and they were actually getting under control. Illegal crossings had dropped because the actions, the deeds, demonstrated that it wasn't worth it to do it. The moment Joe Biden was sworn in on Inauguration Day, the cartels changed their modus operandi, and they swung into action, and the surges began, and they started sending their operatives over the line. But let's not forget, this is human trafficking. These young men and women are subjected to horrible circumstances on the journey over. They are raped. They are used and abused. This is a horrible situation, and America is encouraging it and allowing it to happen. But the left wants to ignore that because they want to give an injection of future Democratic voters. And not even that future. Because I'm back to the fact that you've got the stimulus package coming in where it's billions of dollars being transferred to these blue states that are sanctuary cities and sanctuary states, and that money is going to trickle down into non-government organizations via grants to handle these migrants who illegally enter. They make it to the sanctuary city or the sanctuary state, and they no longer can be asked about their origin, their ID, or any of that, or even if they're COVID positive. It takes more for us to fly back into this country or travel to the Caymans or down in Bermuda and come back in this country than it does for them to enter the country positive COVID and then be shipped on taxpayer dollars, bus tickets everywhere. And now we have the Border Patrol who has switched from the function of securing the border and patrolling to processing. They pull them back from the border and they become processing agents. And now the Biden administration said, not only are we going to do all this and open the border, well, Jen Psaki's trying to tell us the border is not open. Are you going to believe me or your lying eyes, folks? Says the border's closed. They are now going back to everybody that was deported under Donald Trump's administration, Jerry, and flying them back to the country. All of this coming together, the miserable conditions of the trafficking, the rapes that happen there, the cartels are making a fortune off of these bodies. These are cattle to them. Or chattel, personal property. And they have them under control. For one, the debt that they incur for the trip, and the second part is they've got family that are at risk if they don't do what they're told.
Yeah, and Joe, that's the reality. What you're describing is the reality. I mean, the reality is that immigration is a mixed bag. When you have hordes of people coming into your country, there are going to be some good people in there. There are going to be some bad people in there, and there are going to be some absolutely deplorable, awful people in there as well. There's every range. There are people who are law-abiding, there are criminals, and so on. So to paint it all with just a broad brush on either spectrum, on either side of that spectrum, it's just not correct. But we have to be really, really careful because a lot of these people are very, very bad hombres, as we well know, who are coming across the border. And I think people need to understand that a cornerstone, a doctrine of the Democrat policy is to have unfiltered immigration coming in, because the Democrats really do believe that the United States should be the caretaker for the entire world. But to your point, Joe, where this is a mixed bag, that there are a lot of bad people mixed in this bag. We can't bring everybody into the country. It has to be filtered immigration. We're not opposed to immigration, but we want the immigration to be legal, and we want to have some type of a vetting structure that goes on. But for the Dems right now, again, nobody should mistake this. A cornerstone of their policy is that the United States is going to be the unfiltered caretaker of the entire world. We will take anybody, regardless of how bad they are or what a threat they pose to American citizens, and then connect the dots. So we have this, immigration coming in, number one, the first dot. Now we have a funding mechanism in terms of the American Rescue Plan Act that has a lot of money, as you were saying, for sanctuary cities and everything else. And then the third piece of this, of course, is H.R. 1.
Exactly.
Connect the dots.
And let's talk about that a little bit, folks. You're listening to the Joe Mangiacotti Show from the Box Drop Middlesex Mattress Studios in Westboro. And this H.R. 1 bill is another massive, progressive piece of legislation to go forward. And it is designed to pretty much fix all future elections. And this would mean, and I use the term ordained, right? Candidates will be ordained. And I don't mean to bring a religious overtone into it. What I'm saying by that is candidates will be selected by the party in power, and your vote will really have nothing to do with it. So when we look at H.R. 1, it includes things like the elimination of voter ID security. That's right. Right now, voter ID, we're led to believe, or at least they try to convince us, guys like me, you, Jerry, and you, the listener, that it's racist. Of course it's not. Of course it's not. And many people of color are very insulted that the implied message here is that you're just not smart enough. You're not really with it enough to be able to take care of business and get yourself an ID. So we need to, of course, take care of you, being the nanny state that we are. So this H.R. 1 bill would go to all of the communities, the states and jurisdictions that already have voter ID in place and eliminate it. It would be illegal to have a voter ID law in place. Perhaps the most egregious is the Act's elimination of the ID law. All right, that is just a very, very dangerous motion to take there. It would also register millions of criminals, criminality present. All right, so by forcing states to automatically register all people who vote through government outposts such as motor vehicles, state universities, welfare agencies. Now, where I have a problem with this, the registering somebody just because they exist, to me, is not okay. Everybody, every citizen, you have just as much right not to vote as you do to vote. And why I'm saying this is, if you are not registering yourself, if you don't want to be registered, if you don't take the energy and effort to register, and somebody goes and does it in your behalf, that means now you're out there, and that is a vote that you've never intended to use, which to me is putting it up for grabs, and it's allowing the left, in this case, really, to create millions of vote registration and possible potential votes where the actual person that owns that vote will never use it or has no intention. So that's the downside. I don't like that idea that you are registered to vote and you don't even realize that you're registered to vote. So I think that there has to be at least some kind of a understanding that I want it to be registered. Okay, so that is a problem there. Also, they want to prevent, in H.R. 1, Jerry, they would prevent what we call purging of voter rolls, right? They would want to prevent cleaning up voter rolls. If the bill passes, states could not use a combination of voter inactivity and unresponsiveness to maintain their voter lists, but may instead remove illegitimate voter registrations only when their official obtains some other unspecified, objective, and reliable evidence. In other words, it's so important, folks, that voter rolls are, in fact, purged. Because if they aren't, that means they're going to contain people who are either deceased or have moved out of that jurisdiction, or for whatever other reason, they're not legally entitled to vote, which, again, you're giving ammunition to those that may decide that they will borrow your vote, which is totally illegal, folks. So you have H.R. 1 setting, and this is just a couple examples of what's in the bill, that will allow the federalization of, by the way, that's the other part of this, right? It's very clear in the Constitution that the state legislature is the one who controls and determines their elections within that state. But H.R. 1 would federalize this, and that's not supposed to happen. That is absolutely in violation of the Constitution. So they also, it's for the gerrymandering. And no offense to you, Jerry, but the name does come from a Massachusetts politician who was the one who first came up with drawing districts that would favor incumbents. Actually, funny, it comes out of a Massachusetts political operative. They want to take it away and put that power into non-elected civilians who answer to nobody, and it would be a strategy. See, I think that when it comes to districts, we're at a point, and I don't think computers should be involved with the voting machines at all. They shouldn't be internet capable or anything, but I think that a computer should be the one that draws our districts, because all that is supposed to determine, right? A voting district is supposed to be by population only. And you shouldn't be taking parties into it, registered parties. In other words, if you've got the state of Massachusetts, let the computer figure out how many, by the density of the population, what the district should be, never ever entering the data of who's registered to what party or what their voting history is. That's how it's currently done, which is why here in Worcester you've got Representative Jim. He's had the weirdest shape, right? It goes from New Hampshire sometimes down to the Cape. Over the 20 years he's been in there, where he served has changed all over the place in order to keep it a Democrat seat that a Democrat could win over and over again. So these are just a few of the things in the H.R. 1 bill that would federalize the elections, eliminate voter ID, change how we determine the districts, would not allow the purging of votes. These are just a few of the things, Jerry.
Right. So, Joe, it's kind of funny hearing you say that you think that gerrymandering is funny, that it's a native son of Massachusetts. But, a lot of people would say that it's not surprising that it is, right? No surprise there. That something as, wrong as gerrymandering originated here in Massachusetts. I think, the larger issue here, though, is I really do think this border security, the funding that's coming out of the new bill, and then also H.R. 1 to allow these people to vote. And really what it comes down to is I think it was de Tocqueville, who once said that one of the issues with democracy, it was when people understand that they can vote themselves, benefit from a democracy, that's where all the trouble is going to start. And that's kind of where we are, because the Democrats cannot wait to get these people onto the voting rolls. They can't, because these are people who now we're creating a whole underclass, if you will, of dependent people on the government. And when they understand that they can vote themselves favor from the government, that's where this whole thing is going to collapse. Years ago, decades ago, I've heard people, various radio talk show hosts and so on, they've all have asked the question, at this point in time in the United States, are there more people riding in the wagon than there are who are pulling the wagon? That's a big question. Are there more people riding in the wagon than who are pulling the wagon right now in the United States? And the more that tipping point puts more people in the wagon, it's going to be harder and harder for the few who are pulling the wagon, who are funding this whole thing. And this, it gets into the bigger issue, too, of are we moving from truly a free enterprise society into a socialist society right now? These are the big questions. They really are. Yeah. But this is why this issue, Joe, that you're bringing up this morning is so important, and it's such a big issue, because the hordes of people who are coming into this country, how quickly are their votes going to be canceling out your vote to get it into your pocketbook, so you're paying way more than what you are currently paying in taxes? So in the big picture here, folks, we have to bring, I think, integrity back to the election process, because regardless of, I'm not going to get tied down into the 2020 election right now, but the end result is, Jerry, we have 75 million people, give or take, who voted for the other guy and know that something was fishy. And whether or not anything was fishy, you have to deal with the fact that that feeling is out there, and they're not dealing with it. Not only are they not dealing with it, but they're introducing things like H.R. 1, where it would, put drop boxes. I think a voter drop box out in the street somewhere is absolutely asinine. Why, in the same breath that we told our votes are so important and so valuable, yet at the same time they're treated so cavalierly? That should never happen. All right, you should not have a position where people can stuff in Project Veritas and other reporters.
have put these cameras onto these boxes, right? And watch people pull up in the middle of the night or 10 at night, 2 in the morning, and stuff them.
Yeah, and Joe, look at just in a broad way, the ideas behind HR1 have been floated before, many of these ideas.
Yeah.
But COVID-19, the 2020 election, all the social distancing and everything else really gave rebirth to the ideas of HR1. It really kind of resurrected this patient who was probably dead. And 2021, to your point, 2021 had 150, the presidential election had 158 million ballots cast. That was a 7% increase over 2016. So just in a 4-year period of time, putting in mail-in and early in-person voting and all these different things that they did, the drop boxes you're mentioning and everything else, it increased voting in that 4-year period of time by 7%. 7%. And it would now make many of those 2020, 2020 things that we put, accommodations that we put into place, it would make many of them permanent.
But you have to wonder, out of that 7%,
yep, right.
What's the percentage that are legitimate? Are you saying that 7% of 150 million people got up off the couch, registered to vote, and went to the ballot box? Or did bags and suitcases and trucks that disappear from one state and reappear in another state materialize to explain this uptick?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. That's where the rubber meets the road. Is how many of these are legitimate.
All right, folks. Actually, we do have to take a break. I do want to go to the phones. I know Mark in Worcester, you're waiting, but we're seconds away from the 7:30 break, so please hold on to the line there. We're going to take a quick break. It's time for Case Files from the LPDAM, and then we'll return for the final segment of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. I'm Joe Mangiacotti.
Hey folks, Joe Mangiacotti here, and you might have picked up on the fact that I've recently moved and was taking the time to purge the clutter and freshen up some of the furniture and decor. And there is no better item to freshen up than your bed. That's right, your bed is the most important piece of furniture you have. After all, you spend more than a third of your life on it. I checked out the huge, once family-owned stores with tens of thousands of square feet of showroom and warehouses and movie theaters and food courts and shows and the overhead that goes with them. But then I discovered a true family-owned shop. John Rosenfeld and his son have a small showroom and warehouse right in Metro West, 50 Main Street, Ashland. John and his family are actually there in person. They do keep hours, but will meet you by appointment. That's right. John will meet you when it's convenient for you. I first bought a mattress from the big store the brothers used to own and a power base that moved the head and feet, but then I met John and checked out his showroom at 50 Main Street in Ashland and online at boxdropmiddlesex.com and ended up with a better mattress and power base that also heats and massages, all for less than half of what I was going to spend at the other place. Box Drop is a discount mattress store, and John specializes in clearance and closeouts and buys directly from the manufacturer with low overhead and just family employees, passing the savings on to you, and you can see it reflected in the price every day. Click boxdropmiddlesex.com or call John on his cell. This is his cell number, 508-579-9309. That's 508-579-9309. And find John on Facebook at Boxdrop Middlesex. John loves referrals, and this is the best referral I've given so far this year. Dropboxmiddlesex.com. Good morning and welcome to Case Files from the LPDAM, where we take a look at the actual cases, the law and lessons from the findings, and where we share the experiences of the experts of the Private Detectives Association of Massachusetts. I'm Joe Mangiacotti, and joining us this week is Sean Burke, president of the LPDAM and resident manager of Courtside Legal Investigation. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Joe.
Welcome back to Case Files. Always great to have you in studio.
It's great to be here.
And Sean, it seems that the courts offer several specialized options to address common issues we all see in our society. Can you tell us something about how that all works out?
Joe, the Massachusetts courts are broken down into separate divisions or departments. Each court has a role and only handles specific issues. The Supreme Judicial Court is the highest court in the Commonwealth, and for the most part, only hears cases on appeal, which means the case has already been heard by at least one other court. The appeals court is similar to the Supreme Judicial Court and draws its cases from all other courts. The district court and superior courts are similar in many respects. respects because they usually hear a criminal case based on the seriousness of the allegation or a civil case based on a financial threshold. Land court only hears disputes involving land issues, while housing court involves landlord-tenant disagreements. Probate and family court handle issues involving divorces and child custody issues. Juvenile courts, on the other hand, by design, were created to address specific issues revolving around juveniles and DCF involvement, including state custody issues. Finally, the drug court was designed to work with individuals with drug addictions, and the mental health courts were designed to assist individuals with major mental health diagnoses.
Wow, Sean, thanks for breaking that down. It is a lot to digest. Why are there specialty courts?
Joe, specialty courts are a newer concept. What I mean by this is when I worked at Lowell District Court in the late 1980s and early 90s, everything was done in the district courts. There was no juvenile court, no drug court, no mental health court. The court system has evolved and grown to the needs of the Bay State. At LPDM.org, we understand the need and purpose for each individual court. LPDM members are experienced within the courts and how each one functions. What is acceptable evidence in one court may not be acceptable evidence in another court. For example, the standards involving evidence in probate court is much lower than the district court criminal case. Knowing how to collect evidence based on the type of court is important and often affects the outcome. It is not by accident that LPDM member customers report successful results. It's all in the preparation, Joe. I would like to add that much of the resources can be accessed at the social law libraries sprinkled throughout the state. They are the best resource for understanding a case, its history, and likely outcomes. These facilities provide all the case law and are free to access. I used the social law library for much of my research when I wrote the Massachusetts Private Investigators Legal Manual. Joe, when you've been wronged, accused of something, or just want to be treated fairly, an LPDM member can help you get the most positive results. LPDM members are experienced private investigators and all vetted by the Massachusetts State Police. More importantly, we love what we do. Remember, you're in good hands with LPDM.
Well, you certainly are, Sean. That's good information, and I think a lot of people might not have realized just how many specialty courts there were in the roles they played.
Joe, it is amazing all the different aspects of the court system, but knowing it really can help you navigate through the process and give you a better understanding on how it works and what your ultimate outcome will be.
And we're certainly going to come back to your book sometime, but that's for a different time, Sean. Thanks for stopping by Case Files.
Thank you, Joe.
And thank you for joining us for Case Files from the LPDAM. Join us here each week on WCRN 8:30 a.m. and online anytime at lpdamcasefiles.com. And visit us at lpdam.org, and you can find LPDAM on Facebook and Twitter at PINMass and anytime at 800-955-6274. For Sean Burke, I'm Joe Mangiacotti.
To join the conversation, call 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. Now, here's your host, Joe Mangiacotti.
All right, folks, welcome back to the final segment of the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN from the Box Drop Middlesex Mattress Outlet Studios in Westboro. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation, 508-871-7000. And don't forget, we have our text at 617-297-8388, 617-297-8388. And I thought, Jerry, actually, you haven't looked at our text line for a little bit, so maybe we should do that. Let me do that. We'll go to our text line, and oh, yeah, there's a few there, so we'll read them as we go along. My apologies. Jerry Doherty in studio with me, host of Making Money Last, which is Monday through Friday from 11 to 12 noon. Check it out. And now, going forward, Thursdays at 10 o'clock, Political Thursdays with Jerry Doherty, where you concentrate on that intersection of your finances and politics. And don't for a moment, don't think that they actually matter to each other. They connect. All right, let's go to the phones. Mark has been waiting patiently. Thanks, Mark, for holding through the break. Good morning. You're on with Jerry Doherty and myself, and you look marvelous.
You look marvelous as well.
What's
I
up?
hate to belabor the obvious, but for the last 12 years, we really haven't had an FBI director or an attorney general who actually has been enforcing the laws as they are written on the books, federal laws. Okay, we're talking about Eric Holder, who called himself Obama's wingman. You're not Obama's wingman, dude. You're the chief law enforcement of the United States of America. Okay? He never got that. Then he was followed by Loretta Lynch. Okay? You talk about being a pro-activist, politicized attorney general. She meets in secret with a woman who's under FBI investigation.
Well, the husband. Met with the husband, yeah.
Happens to be the President of the United States for what? A half an hour, evacuates everybody off the aircraft, and they have a secret meeting on a tarmac, okay, while his wife is under investigation. This is the Attorney General of the United States, Loretta Lynch. Then we go, okay, that's enough. Then we get a new one. We get Jeff Sessions, who recuses himself shortly after he's nominated and made Attorney General of the United States. He essentially recuses himself of any investigation of Hillary Clinton. Okay? Then he finally gets rid of that deadbeat, and he gets another deadbeat, A.G. Barr, who refuses to do his job, who appoints a U.S. attorney, Durham, from Connecticut, and after 2 years of supposed investigations, just before the election says, I don't want to politicize the process by handing out indictments, and he screws. After 2 years, this is the problem that we have. We have guys that either don't have the stones or they're compromised. I don't know what their problem is. But
well,
they
Mark,
do not want to they don't want to hold legal voting laws. They don't want to investigate criminal activity.
Mark, let me say something, Mark. You did a wonderful job, actually, in running down the last several attorney generals, because I think for the most part, a lot of people probably forget. We seem to collectively forget some things, and it's good that you're there to remind us of this stuff. But you're 100% right. I mean, what has happened to both the job of FBI director in those top echelon and what happened to the position of attorney general? These people have started to make it a joke. Thank you for the call, Mark, very much. And yes, the secret meeting on the tarmac, the wingman thing with Eric Holder. I mean, this stuff, you look at this and you're saying, again, I always go back, Jerry, to what was it that the founding fathers were trying to do? Because they did. It was a stroke of brilliance in the timeline of the planet Earth that this government was formed. It was formed out of the need of taking everything that was so bad about the monarchies and the tyranny and putting into play a system of checks and balances that so much thought and detail were put into it on how to handle things. And then what did they do? They wrote the owner's manual for the country and they gave it to us. And we always seem to forget that we have the instructions. And that's called the United States Constitution.
It's broken down, though, Joe.
Yeah.
It's broken. There's been a breakdown, and it's what a couple of the callers brought up this morning. And Mark, I think that you bring it up as well. You know, some people would say it's this hyper politicized environment that we're in. I would encourage people to pick up a couple of Peter Schweitzer's books, and I would say more simplistically, just follow the money. You know, with the founding fathers, they did envision the citizen politician, somebody who would be involved in business, somebody who was out there working on their farm, running their acres, working, you know, and it was a burden for them to go to Washington, D.C. It would actually hurt them financially, and it was a burden for the families and so on. Today, that's all, you know, changed around. And if you read a couple of Peter Schweitzer's books about this, you'll see this. You have these people who have literally created these fortunes through their government jobs. And now they don't want to, you know, give up those fortunes that they've created, which is why they surround themselves with people in this, you know, like Eric Holder, Loretta Lynch, in these hyper politicized, environments that we may say that, but really what they're doing is they're just protecting people. You have to remember, whether it's the Obamas or whether it's the Clintons, they went into office relatively poor. They weren't wealthy people. And they have now left office among the wealthiest people in the United States. That's how they are.
You got to remember, the Clintons were the first, or Bill Clinton was the first president in the history of the United States not to be a landowner when he became president. He had spent 8 years in the governor's mansion, and he went to the White House. They didn't own any property when he became president. First president in the history of the country. So, I mean, that's interesting, a little factoid, right? But and now you have Barack Obama, what is $16-17 million Martha's Vineyard coastal property, I think it was.
And what's the Clintons' Chappaqua house worth?
Well, they have 5 houses.
They have a bunch, but I'm saying, that main one, I think, the residents of New York.
Which, by the way, the Secret Service is at all of them, and your tax dollars have to secure all of these homes, as well as transportation for these past presidents. But that's not a conversation I'm going to get into, because that's what we do. We do protect our presidents. Even though Nancy Pelosi et al. Wanted to actually take away Donald Trump's ability to be buried at Arlington National Cemetery and his Secret Service details. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation as we broadcast from the Box Drop Middlesex Mattress Outlet Studios. Don't forget to check out Box Drop Middlesex Outlet. It's 50 Main Street in Ashland. You can find them on Facebook. Hey, if you need a bed and a new mattress, there are unbelievable deals there because they just don't have that overhead. Let me go to the phones. Ken in Polton, thank you for waiting patiently. Good morning, Ken. You're on with Jerry Doherty and myself.
Good morning, Joe and Jerry.
Good morning, Ken.
I picked up a nugget yesterday that I'm guessing neither one of you may be familiar with.
Do share.
As part of the legislate or the big package, $2 trillion almost that passed and was signed this past week, is a provision that if the states accept the bailout money that's going as part of the package, over $300 billion, they can't cut taxes.
Yeah, that I caught that too. That they're preventing them from cutting taxes. This is an opportunity, Ken, where the progressive element of Washington D.C. inside the Beltway, they want to mess with the states, right? They want to blur the line. They want to control states. The states should be it's the United States coming in. Every state should be taking care of themselves, as the Constitution says. They'll determine their elections. They should determine on the state level their education system and their gun laws and all of that happens. It's this huge push, right, for the federal government to be the most important entity in the room.
Well,
and it's
worse
not
than
supposed
most
to be
important.
that.
It's controlling. It's like saying we don't have states.
Right.
What powers you thought you had,
they're
we're now
taking
going
the
to take away.
individuality of the states away. They're rolling it all into just a branch of the federal government.
Right. So remember when Pat Buchanan was running for president all those decades ago? Pat Buchanan.
80s, right?
Probably 1980s. I forget it exactly. But, to your point, Ken, Pat Buchanan, he consistently said that, when the United States was founded, we had a tax system. We paid more taxes at the local level. And at the local level, you can in Bolton, or I can in my town, or Joe in your town, you can walk down to town hall and you can figuratively punch somebody in the nose. You can walk in there and you can say, look, I'm very upset about this policy. I'm paying all these property taxes and so on. The point is that you have a lot of control at the local level. When we give more control, especially for taxation at the federal level, we completely give up control. We cannot go to the Capitol. And we can't go down there, and we can't talk to lawmakers. We have virtually no access to these people at the federal level. So we have now transformed this thing into an upside-down tax system where the vast majority of our taxes are paid to people in Washington, D.C., to whom we have no access, rather than at the local level. And this is a consistent theme that's been going on in the United States now for at least 50 years, for probably more like 70 years, how we're giving up greater and greater control at the federal level, where we have less and less control.
And it happens at the same time that these same incumbent people are orchestrating the legislation to basically they determine the outcome of the elections, meaning that, yes, we don't have access to them. We can't say it. In the power that we did have, and that was to vote you out of office, is slipping away from us.
Right.
It's slipping away from us because they're putting in, and they want to put in, these ballot harvesting, these long flexible dates, these no purging of the voter rolls, all of these things that make the election process ripe for fraud and irregularities, and taking away the little last remaining power we had, and that was at the ballot box. Right. And we should be scared about this, Ken.
Well, the question is, are the red states that are going to challenge this, and they better challenge it quickly to knock it down as quickly as possible.
Well, I hope so, Ken, because I don't know about you. Are you still getting the texts and the emails asking for donations and money to kick into this? And my response is, where were you? Where were you before the 2020 election? How come these weren't successful ballots, challenges to the changes in the law? You know, it's interesting. I had gone into around the corner from me is a little pizza place, and it's Greek owned. It's two brothers, and over the years going in there, I've chatted with them, and they've been here a very long time, and they love America. They're citizens. They have this pizza shop, Ken. They work very hard. They loved Trump. They had Fox on, right? This is in Worcester. They had Fox on, and when you go in, playing very loudly, which you don't find in a lot of places. And they would talk to me about how, you know, their feelings on immigration and how this all works. And they feel that, you know, the border should be very secure and people should do it the right way like they did and so forth. Well, I go in there the other day in one of some financial stations streaming. And I said, geez, what happened? You used to have Fox on all the time. No. Nope. They turned against the president. They screwed Trump. Never again will Fox be on in here. And I thought about that, and I said, wow, look at that attitude, that feeling that they've been portrayed, that Fox did that to the president. Another example that the feeling that we had, and we always had that feeling, Ken, right, that we always have the ballot box. And if that's taken away from us, are we even America anymore?
So, Ken, as I understand it, too, when you asked the question about red states, as I understand it, that there are right now on, H.R. 1, before H.R. 1, had this rebirth, there are 30 states that have Republican legislatures, and apparently all of them, and 3 other states, 3 blue states, so 33 states in total, have already introduced bills to tighten their voting process. So, as you know, the whole thing about H.R. 1, too, is whether it's even constitutional, because you are supposed to have the state legislature. So there's going to be, I would assume, a ton of litigation, surrounding this thing, and it's going to go forward. And, Ken, as well as I do and Joe does, how litigation works, this thing is going to go on for years and years and years. So we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. Ken, thank you so much for the call. Always a great call. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Let's go to Joe in Worcester. Good morning, Joe. You're on with Jerry Doherty and myself on the Joe Mangiacotti Show.
As far as taxes, I don't know if it's still in existence, but Citizens for Limited Taxation.
CLT.
Yeah. Barbara Anderson.
Right. Barbara
yes,
Anderson.
Actually, they still are
late
because Chuck Faulkner took that over. Barbara Anderson, as you know, led that for a long time. She did a fantastic job. That all kind of rolled out from the Proposition 2.5. And I'm very proud to have been endorsed by CLT on my state Senate run and get their PAC money. And to this day, one of my favorite pictures in my home office and studio is actually Barbara Anderson handing me that check. Wow. And I was endorsed by CLT. It's one of my proudest moments in my political career was earning that endorsement. But go ahead, Joe.
Also, as far as the FBI being politicized, look at its history. Look at J. Edgar Hoover. Would you say that he was objective? I mean, let's get real here. This isn't a recent development.
No, yeah.
The FBI's always been political.
Yep.
I mean, even in the days of Nixon, for God's sake.
Joe, how did he hold on to be the director of the FBI for as long as he did? You know, it was because he had dirt, right? From on every president. I mean, his file on Kennedy's might have been thicker than everyone else, but
yeah.
That's why I laugh when people say, "Oh, it's a recent." But they act like this the political views of the FBI are going to be they're going to be objective. Let's be real here.
No, good point.
Whoever's appointed at a given point in time, they're not going to be totally objective under any administration, Republican, independent, or otherwise. And even the Attorney General, they tend to be political in terms of their background. I mean, they're supposed to be objective in terms of their decisions. But I mean, you look at the history of Attorney Generals down through the decades. This is not a recent development in our history.
No, I think that's a point well taken.
Absolutely. I think, too, J. Edgar Hoover operated very autonomously. He became so powerful, after he had the U.S. Marshals and the evolution of the whole FBI, really solidly in post-World War II. When you look at how powerful J. Edgar Hoover he really was the most powerful man in the United States. And, Joe, I will tell you, my father was an FBI agent for 27 years, and he was hired directly in 1941, somewhere around there. He was hired off the college campus at Georgetown Law School directly by J. Edgar Hoover. He was doing campus recruiting and ended up staying in the FBI until almost 1970, that point in time. So my parents revered J. Edgar Hoover. They really did.
You know something? This is fun. With all of this, these cartoons being canceled, right? Pepe Le Pew is out there and Hanna-Barbera. And I remember that the what was supposed to be the best-kept secret there of J. Edgar Hoover, right, and his cross-dressing and so forth, wasn't, because there is a cartoon, and I saw it when I was a kid, where you got that narrator going, and all of a sudden they're doing this law enforcement, and they go, in FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, and there's this cartoon character in a dress and a hat and wig, and he looks surprised, and the narrator goes, "Oh, well, the FBI director must be under undercover surveillance operation." In other words, the Hanna-Barbera cartoon slipped that in 50, 60 years ago into a cartoon for Saturday morning.
There's a great biography on J. Edgar Hoover, too, and I did read the thing, but it was probably 25 years ago. I think it's called Puppet Master. Isn't that the name of it? I think it's the biography, kind of the definitive. Is that Puppet Master, I believe.
Well, you know what,
but
Joe?
I don't remember much of it, Joe, but I can tell you, growing up in my household, and my mother was actually a secretary in the FBI. This is in the New York City office, which is how my parents met.
Oh,
it's kind of interesting. They both worked for
They're both G-men and G-ladies.
Well, she was actually just an administrative person.
Yeah, she's still government,
and she was also a model, believe it or not.
Wow.
So, I know she's been dead for a few years now, but she'd have me definitely work in, and I was also a model in New York. That would be very important to her.
We got to dig those pictures out. I mean,
she was very nice, but she had a degree of vanity.
Yeah,
so
that's okay. That's okay. Good point, Joe. And it's taken very well. And that's the thing. And my feeling on that is that the majority of the people who go through law school or accounting and they want to work for the FBI, those rank and file people, I think, for most part, are patriots and are there for the right reasons. But to pretend that the upper echelon and these FBI directors are apolitical and totally unbiased, I mean, especially with it's unrealistic, especially with the behavior of people like James Comey, who has seriously embarrassed the office of the FBI.
Turning over in their graves.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else, Joe, before I let you go? You want to jump in?
No. That was the only point I really had.
All right, awesome. Thank you for the call, Joe. Always appreciate it. All right. Dry mouth here today, Jerry. So we're coming up to the close of the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Tell me what's going on this week with Making Money Last, because we're back. You are back to 5 solid days of retirement planning from 11 to 12 noon. the launch this past week of Political Thursdays with Jerry Doherty took place, and so now every Thursday at 10 o'clock, people can tune in to get your perspective of politics in the intersection of that with your wealth.
A conservative point of view, Joe, as you know, a conservative point of view on Political Thursdays from 10 to 11 in the morning. It really is kind of the interchange, between politics, the economy, your pocketbook. I think a lot of people are feeling that right now.
Yeah.
And also the country that we want to leave for our children. That's really what it's all about. It's those issues. And when you look at the things that we've spoken about today, especially border security, this new funding bill that we have, and the H.R. 1, and how these things are all tied together, connecting the dots on those things, it really is kind of a troubling picture that begins to emerge. So we need to kind of get the word out there and kind of regain control of this country, and it can be done.
And what's important is, this $1.9 trillion, again, passed, not to address the COVID-19, because 9% of it dealt with that. Plus, we have literally billions of dollars from the first package that we hadn't spent yet. We've got the whole school opening situation. And what I look at, Jerry, is what you're saying. Not just the country that we're going to leave our children and our grandchildren, great-grandchildren, but it's the debt service that we're going to leave them. Right. Because that $1,400 check now, folks, that you're going to get direct deposited, or as Joe Biden says, it'll be cut from the Treasury, that costs you almost $6,000. So it's $5,700 and something dollars on the head of every woman, man, and child in the United States to pay for that. So you just exchanged that. I mean, how long would you stay in business if you exchanged for $1,400? It cost you almost $6,000, Jerry. You wouldn't have the doors open very long.
Right.
But we're just printing this money. The point is, folks, our children are being born with a debt on their head, and we're expected to get up, be educated, go to work, pay our taxes, and pay for somebody being born in another country who's going to come here and take these benefits without ever participating and putting in. But that's the wrap of the show. It's the end of the show. Man, Jerry, thank you so much for being in.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, folks, have a fantastic weekend. Tune in to Jerry Monday at 11 a.m.
WACE Chicopee and WCRN Worcester. 8 o'clock.
I never could hear anything. You feel kind